Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the shadows of a medieval court. A place where gold leaf shimmers under candlelight, where roasted peacocks steam on silver trays, and where you, unfortunately, are the entertainment. Not because you volunteered, not even because you're funny, but because you were chosen. You, in that scratchy velvet tunic and jingling hat, are now the court jester. The room smells like melting wax, overripe cheese, and the faint metallic scent of anxiety. Yours. You kneel before a throne as wide as a wagon and just as squeaky. A noble with more rings than fingers gestures lazily at you and says, "Make us laugh." You do. You laugh, they don't. That's your first mistake. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing our little bedtime crew around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You've never worn velvet before. It itches in places you didn't know had nerve endings. The bells on your cap jingle with every step, like a walking warning bell that screams, "Don't blend in." Your boots are mismatched because, well, that's part of the look. One's made of goat leather. The other? Honestly, it might have been a mitten once. You enter the grand hall of the castle, and it's somehow colder indoors than it was out on the muddy road. The torches sputter like they're arguing with the damp, and tapestries line the walls. Not for beauty, but to keep the wind from slapping every noble upside the head. You're here because you can tell stories, juggle a bit, and once got slapped by a bishop for a limerick that rhymed abbot with rabbit. That kind of skill set doesn't go unnoticed. Word gets around, especially when nobody wants to be the one doing the laughing during a famine. A steward, one of those thin-lipped types who looks like he hasn't blinked since the last crusade, explains the deal. You live in the court now. You eat when they eat, sleep when they don't, and you're always, always on. If a noble weeps, distract them. If a baby wails, entertain them. If someone farts too loudly at dinner, congratulations, now it's part of your routine. You're also the only one in the room allowed to call the king a cabbage without getting beheaded. That's your special license. Your fool's privilege. Use it wisely or end up with your tongue nailed to the stocks for humor unbecoming. Historians still argue whether jesters were legally protected in most courts or just tolerated like rats in the granary. Technically part of the system, but not someone anyone wanted to deal with too closely. Tonight is your first performance. There's a dead goose on the banquet table, feathers still clinging to its greasy skin. One lord is already asleep, a goblet spilling red wine down his chin like he just lost a duel. Another is laughing at absolutely nothing. Probably drank the mead with the mushrooms in it. You step into the middle of it all and feel their eyes stick to you like wet laundry. You're not a person to them. You're the fool. Capital F. Lowercase respect. So you do what you do best. Talk fast, move faster, and hope nobody asks you to sing, because your voice sounds like a bagpipe drowning. You get a few laughs, a polite chuckle here, a wheeze from the Duchess when you trip over a chicken. She throws you a coin, it hits your temple. You bow anyway. A fringe detail most people don't know. Some jesters kept animals. Trained rats, tiny dogs, even parrots, because the noble kids like them. You have a goose feather you pretend is a magic wand. It only does one trick, gets you out of trouble. Occasionally, after your routine, you're ushered to the servants' wing, not exactly a room, more like a corner with a curtain. Your bed is straw, your blanket is a retired tapestry depicting a saint being. Flayed. Cozy. You lie there and listen to the castle creak around you. You can hear the kitchens dumping bones into the moat. Somewhere, a baby cries, then a door slams. You smell fire. Not real fire. Just the scent of old wood, candle smoke, and something you can only describe as burnt soup and regret. And then comes your first summons. It's not a bell. It's not even words. Just the steward clearing his throat outside your curtain. That noise means someone important needs a laugh now, or they're going to start throwing things. You pull on your boots, wrong feet, no time, and stumble back into the hall. It's the king. He's staring at a chessboard. His opponent is a stuffed owl. He looks up and says, "Do a dance." That's it. That's your prompt. You do. You flail like a fish. You pretend to be the owl. You insult the chessboard. You mock a knight who lost earlier today and is now glaring daggers at you. The king laughs. The knight doesn't. And just like that, you survive your first day. The thing is, most people think being a jester was just clown work. They imagine tumbling, juggling, telling knock-knock jokes and rhyming couplets. But the truth? It was performance plus politics. You had to be funnier than you were threatening. Just enough sass to amuse, but not enough to insult. One misread, that jibe about Lady Margaret's fourth husband? Yeah, turns out he's standing right behind you. And he's got a sword that's seen more action than you ever will. But back to your bed now. Well, bed. You curl under the flayed saint and dream of warm bread, dry socks, and maybe a less terrifying job, like plague doctor or executioner's assistant. At least then you'd get weekends off. Still, you wake the next morning alive mostly, and in this world, that's a win. You're up before the rooster. Mostly because there is no rooster. The cook wrung its neck last night and stuffed it with barley and wild onions. It was delicious, apparently. You wouldn't know. The only thing you got from the feast was a bit of gristle someone spat into the rushes. The bells on your cap jingle every time you turn your head. Which is unfortunate, because you keep glancing nervously at the guards as you tiptoe across the stone floor, heading for the kitchen hearth to warm your fingers. You're not technically supposed to be here, but technically only matters when you're someone who matters. Your uniform, if we can even call it that, is a mess of red and yellow patches stitched together like someone lost a bet. The hat is a disaster. Floppy with 3 points, each ending in a tiny bell that sounds more like mosquitoes than music. One bell is already crushed. The others are on their way. And still somehow it's expected that you radiate joy. Today, you're summoned to the Queen's Solar, an airy little upstairs chamber that smells like dried lavender, candle smoke, and the constant tension of court politics. You're not here for jokes, though. Not yet. You're here to observe. See, there's a visiting noble from somewhere across the channel. Nobody's quite sure where. And the Queen wants your opinion. Why? Because you're not a knight. You're not a priest. You're not even technically a person in this room, which makes you invisible and very, very useful. This is the part they don't write into the plays. The part where a jester becomes more than entertainment. A counselor, a mirror, sometimes a scapegoat. Historians still argue whether jesters held any real influence or were just sounding boards for bored monarchs. But here you are, nodding sagely while a duke with too many teeth describes his very practical plan to import swans as war beasts. You smile. You joke. Ah yes, nothing says fear like aggressive pond birds. The Queen chuckles. The Duke doesn't, you note it. File it away. It might save you later, you're more than a clown. You're a pressure valve. But outside that rare air of nobility, your world is less elegant. You perform for everyone. The laundresses ask you to sing while they beat linen with paddles. The stable boys dare you to mimic the bishop during vespers. You do. They roar with laughter. Then they scatter when the bishop himself walks by. You're still mid-pose, one leg lifted, eyes wide, mouth twisted in holy mockery. When the bishop stops in front of you, you brace for the blow, but instead he mutters, "Work on the voice." I don't lisp. Then he walks on. You don't breathe for 3 full minutes. A curious tidbit most folks overlook. Some jesters doubled as messengers. They'd carry notes between nobles or perform secret deliveries because no one suspected the fool of being clever. You've already passed 2 jokes that were actually coded instructions, and you're not even entirely sure what they said. But hey, Plausible deniability. Back in the Great Hall, the tables are being reset. Trenchers scraped. Goblets wiped with dubious rags. A rat or two shoot off a half-eaten ham. You pass a servant sweeping the rushes. He nods at you. Nice jig last night. You nod back. Thanks. I nearly vomited from spinning. You hit it well. That's years of training. There's a joke there, but you're too tired to find it. Then comes the worst part of the day. The children. Noble children, specifically. They've been told you're fun. They believe this means you enjoy being screamed at while being pelted with apples. Rotten ones. Where are they even getting these apples? One child grabs your hat. Another hits you with a wooden sword. You pretend it's funny. You make a fart noise with your elbow. They shriek with delight. This is the real test. Not the nobles, not the jokes. Them. Children don't fake laughter. They laugh when you're ridiculous, and they scream when you try too hard. So you balance. One eye on the bouncing toddler, one ear on the whispers of the governess, one smile carefully frozen in place like a painted saint. Do the donkey voice, they demand. You do it. Fall down again. You do that too. You've bruised your tailbone. Again. By dusk, you're exhausted, but the day isn't over. The king is hosting another guest. You're summoned to the high table. Not to sit, of course. To dance. Literally. You're the opener for the feast, like a courtly warm-up act, preparing the nobles for gluttony and gossip. So you twirl. You skip. You balance a pear on your head while reciting bawdy verses from a band poem. You drop a subtle dig at the Earl of Norwic's failed moat project. The hall chuckles. The Earl doesn't. Another mental note. You've learned to read the room faster than you can read a scroll. Who laughs genuinely? Who only smiles when others do? Who never laughs at all? The most dangerous ones are the quiet smilers. They don't forget. And they never forgive. You survive the night without incident, a minor miracle. You even get a leftover pastry from the kitchen as thanks. It's mostly crust, but it's sweet and flaky and tastes like victory. You crawl back to your curtain corner. Your bells clink against the cold stone as you collapse onto your straw. Someone's snoring nearby. Someone else is muttering in their sleep. You wonder what it's like to sleep in a real bed, with sheets, with privacy, maybe in the next life. As you drift off, you think about the strange duality of your life. A joke. A tool. A person who's supposed to be invisible but unforgettable. You're allowed to mock the crown, and yet you're terrified of a stable boy's sneeze starting a rumor that gets you killed. You remember the steward's words. Laughter is mandatory. So is survival. Balance both, or neither. You wonder who was the last fool before you. What happened to them? Nobody talks about it. But you're here. For now. Still laughing. There's a phrase you start hearing whispered around court. The fool got bold. And every time someone says it, they say it like a warning, not a compliment. See, the thing about being funny for a living is that eventually you forget the difference between a joke and an insult. Or worse, you remember, but you deliver it anyway, hoping they'll take it the right way. That's today's problem. Because today you went too far. It starts harmless. You're performing after supper again. Another round of giggling nobles with greasy fingers and wine-stained sleeves. You pull out your usual tricks, some wordplay, some clumsy acrobatics, and your semi-famous impression of the royal falconer. People love that one. The falconer, notably, does not. Then, for just a moment, you feel brave. The king chuckles at your joke about knights being scared of their own armor, and you ride the wave. You make a jab at Sir Luther, who's sitting right there, about his legendary skill in falling off horses not once, not twice, but 3 times in a single tournament. Big laugh. The king snorts mead out his nose. Sir Luther doesn't laugh. He just stares. You feel it immediately, the shift in the room, like the wind changed direction. Everyone's still smiling, but they're watching him, not you. Watching how he's going to react. Because laughter here is a test of status. Luther finally smiles, tight and teethless, and lifts his goblet. To the Jester's memory, may it be long. You bow, you retreat, and then you spend the rest of the night wondering whether that was a toast or a threat. Historians still argue whether jesters had formal protections for what they said or just informal mercy. Either way, your neck feels a little more exposed than usual. The next morning, your bells are silent. Literally, you've taken them off, tied them into a pouch. Today, stealth feels safer than sparkle. You tiptoe into the chapel, not to pray, just to sit in the one place no one yells, throws food, or demands a dance. You watch the candlelight flicker on the stone saints, each one chipped, faded, and still somehow judging you. The monks ignore you. You're outside their jurisdiction, in every sense. Then a whisper. The steward. Again. The queen wants to see you. Your stomach flips. The queen rarely wants anything from you. You're her distraction, her breathing interlude between embroidery and intrigue. But when you arrive, you're not alone. Sir Luthar is there, standing beside her with his arms crossed like a gargoyle with a grudge. You bow, keep it deep, keep your voice calm. Your Grace, how may I be humiliated today? The queen smirks. Luther doesn't. Do the horse joke, she says. You freeze. You're being tested. Or baited. You glance at Luther, then at her, then back to him. And you realize something crucial. She hated that man's moat plan too. You do the joke. Shorter this time. Sharper. She laughs. Loud and lovely and sharp as a bell. Luther clenches his jaw, but he nods. Cleverer than he looks, he mutters and walks out. You exhale for the first time in 10 minutes. The queen gives you a look. Not warm, not cold, just calculating. You know you're funnier when you're scared. You nod. That's when I'm most creative. She waves you away. Here's the thing no one tells you. Laughter can be a weapon, and you're the one swinging it, but also the target. You're expected to poke fun upward, but not too far. You can humiliate a noble, so long as someone more powerful finds it amusing. Cross the invisible line, and suddenly your jokes are treasonous satire. Which brings us to today's second performance. Dinner in the servants' hall. It's more relaxed. There's stew, there's bread. Someone brought beer. You're among people who clean chamber pots and chase geese out of kitchens. Here your humor shifts. Less wit, more slapstick. Less politics, more fart jokes. They love you. It feels good. One of the scullery maids asks, "Why don't you run away?" Go join a troop? You shrug. At least here, when they throw food at me, it's expensive. They laugh. And for a moment, you're not the fool. You're just a person. A tired, semi-talented storyteller with sore ankles and breadcrumbs in your pocket. A quirky truth? Some jesters were deliberately kept near illiterate. Not because they were dumb, but because too much knowledge made them dangerous. A clever fool with books? No, that's a threat. Back in your chamber corner, you replay the day. You survived Luther. You made the queen laugh. You avoided being turned into stew. All wins. But you can't shake the feeling that every laugh buys you one more day, and not a minute more. You fall asleep to the sound of distant minstrels tuning lutes, and someone outside arguing about whose turn it is to empty the privy barrel. You dream of dancing on a tightrope, blindfolded, with swords swinging below. When you wake, it's with a start, and the taste of yesterday's joke still bitter in your throat. There's no such thing as a sick day when your job is to be happy. You wake up coughing, not dramatically. Just that dry, tickling kind of cough that means trouble is coming. Your throat's tight, your knees ache, and your chest feels like it's been packed with damp straw. You try to stretch and immediately regret it. Muscles scream, bones crack. A toe is definitely bruised, Probably from that accidental kick to the wine barrel last night during your wildly unsuccessful attempt at cartwheeling over a roast pig. You're sick, but you're still expected to be funny. The steward pokes his face through your curtain with the same expression he'd probably use to examine spoiled milk. You're on at midday. You croak, I might be dying. He raises an eyebrow. So be twice as amusing. Nothing's funnier than a man trying not to vomit. And just like that, you're up. You manage to splash water on your face, slap some color into your cheeks, and rub charcoal under your eyes to disguise the shadows. It works. Sort of. You look less ill and more possessed. Close enough. Here's a thing most people forget. Jesters didn't have understudies. If you couldn't perform, you didn't get replaced. You got punished. Maybe not outright. No one's going to flog the king's favorite jester over a sore throat. But they might reconsider your value. And in court, value is everything. So you perform. Midday finds you juggling apples in the garden, while the Duke's idiot nephews throw pine cones at your head and laugh like it's the funniest thing since the invention of socks. You cough in the middle of a punchline. The Duchess squints. Is he drunk? You respond with a burp and a cartwheel because it's better to be drunk than sick. Drunks get a pass. Sick people get quarantined, or worse, blamed. Remember, this is a world where people still treat disease like a moral failing. Historians still argue whether jesters were considered too lowborn to matter when it came to contagion, or too essential to be sidelined. Either way, nobody's bringing you soup. The rest of the day is a blur. You're sweating under your patched tunic, bells jangling with every fevered step. You trip. You fake a pratfall to cover it. You almost pass out during a limerick and turn it into a gag about the mead being poisoned. Big laugh. You're a master of hiding discomfort. After all, discomfort is your full-time coworker. There's a moment, just one, when you sit down behind the stables, head between your knees, trying not to vomit. A stable hand hands you a flask. You sip it. It's strong, you thank him. He shrugs. We all have to get through somehow. Then he walks off to shovel manure, whistling your theme song. Back inside the hall, you're summoned for a private performance. That's usually a bad sign. Private performances are for people who want to laugh at you, not with you. It's Lord Brenwald. Widowed, wealthy, absolutely miserable. His idea of fun is watching people flinch. He sits in his chair like a vulture perched on a dying branch. Tell me something funny, he says, not smiling. You tell a story about a priest, a blacksmith, and a chicken in a thunderstorm. It's one of your best. You've timed the pauses perfectly. There's a chicken impression halfway through that never fails. He doesn't laugh, just watches. At the end, he says, "You look ill." You shrug. Only on the outside. He snorts. We all do. Then he tosses you a coin. It's silver, heavy. You nod in thanks, bow, and leave as fast as your shaking legs will carry you. You count that coin 5 times before you believe it's real. Later that night, back in your corner, you finally stop pretending. The straw smells like mold. Your body feels like it's melting. You curl under your tapestry and let the fever take over. And then someone pulls the curtain aside. It's the steward. Again. Why is it always him? The king's daughter is crying, he says flatly. She wants a story. You try to protest, but the look on his face says, don't bother. So you rise slowly, painfully, and drag yourself to the princess's chamber. She's 7, small, pale, and far too clever. She sits up in bed, eyes wide, face blotchy. Tell me the one about the goat who became a knight, she whispers. So you do. You sit on the floor, your back to the wall, and tell her about Sir William the Brave, a goat with a heart of gold and absolutely no sense of direction. You make up half of it on the spot. Your voice cracks. You cough between sentences. She laughs twice, once loudly, once softly. Then she falls asleep. You sit there for a while after, watching her breathe, wondering what it must be like to be 7, royal and terrified of thunder. You stagger back to your curtain corner and finally collapse. The steward doesn't call again. Quirky truth? Some courts paid jesters in room and board only. No coin, no retirement, no promise. Your salary was staying alive, staying useful, staying seen. Tonight, you dream of silence, not death, just stillness. A world with no jingle, no barking laughter, no one shouting your name in the middle of the night. A world where you can just be. The wind moans through the cracks in the castle walls. Your fevered body trembles. You smile to yourself in the dark. Tomorrow you'll be funny again, because you have to be. They start calling you the king's favorite pet. Not to your face, of course. Behind your back, in the kitchens and corridors, whispers behind goblets. Smirks passed between squires. Careful what you say, the pet might bite, they laugh. You hear it all anyway, but you've been called worse. Much worse. And besides, there's a twisted truth to it. You are the king's pet. Not a hound, not a falcon, more like a singing parrot. Colorful, noisy, clever, until the cage door opens one day and nobody bothers to feed you again. Today, the king invites you to sit beside him. Yes, beside him. The court doesn't quite know what to do with that. A ripple of confusion runs through the noble ranks like someone's poured cold gravy down the back of their collars. The throne room smells of candle wax, wet stone, and barely concealed resentment. You sit quietly, bells muted, posture perfect. Your patched tunic has been brushed. Your shoes, still mismatched, at least don't squeak. The king is in a mood. One of his warships didn't return. Pirates, perhaps, or poor weather, or poor leadership. He sighs. Tell me something useless. You blink. The average chicken blinks more than a bishop during confession. He snorts. Good. Tell me another. You oblige. The court astronomer believes the moon causes bad poetry. He chuckles again. True. The room loosens slightly. Shoulders drop. Smiles return. You've done it again. Turned tension into tittering. And just like that, you're back in the cage. Comfy. Perched. Useful. But being the king's pet comes with responsibilities. Later, he takes you for a walk. Not a stroll through the gardens, a walk. That dangerous kind of royal walk where important things are whispered, and you have to laugh at the right moment so no one else knows a decision has just been made. He gestures at 2 courtiers. Do you think they're conspiring? You squint dramatically. Only if lace cuffs are code for murder. He laughs. Then he leans in. Watch them. Tell me what they say. You're invisible to them. And just like that, you're a spy. Historians still argue whether court jesters were truly part of espionage networks, or simply a convenient pair of ears with no official record. But when the king gives you a wink and a sealed scroll, you don't need a historian to explain what's happening. You hide the scroll inside your hat. Deliver it later to a monk who doesn't blink when you joke about smuggling heresy in your underpants. He just takes the scroll and vanishes. That night, the kitchen is quiet. Even the mice seem tense. You sit near the fire, warming your toes and chewing on crusty bread dipped in wine. A servant girl sits beside you, doesn't say anything for a while. Finally, she asks, "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" You look at her. Pretending you're happy. You think about it. Then you smile, softly. Only when I'm awake. She nods, says nothing else. You don't either. Quirky detail of the night? One noble believes you're a forest spirit in disguise. Says the jingle of your bells summons mischief from the air. He leaves small offerings of honey and dried mushrooms near your sleeping corner. You haven't the heart to tell him you're just a very tired peasant in a cursed hat. Back in your bed that night, you listen to the wind rattle the shutters. A storm's coming. You can feel it in your knees. The castle creaks and groans like an old ship. Somewhere, a baby cries. Somewhere else, a guard is throwing up mead. You smile again. Not because you're happy, just because you're still here. In the morning, you wake to find a small paper note under your pillow, no name. Just 6 words. He watches those who don't laugh. You fold it, tuck it into your boot, and then you go to breakfast, because even pets have to eat. There are days when you're not the jester. You're the errand boy, the secret keeper, the scapegoat. Today, you're all 3. It starts at dawn when you're dragged, literally from your straw bed by a steward whose personality could be best described as wet parchment. No explanation. Just, you're needed. You're too groggy to argue. Your dreams had only just started getting interesting. Something about juggling live eels for a crowd of ducks wearing crowns. You're led to the Queen's solar. Again. But this time, she isn't alone. Lord Furwick is there. Smiling like a man who's planning to build a tower out of skulls and call it a chapel. You know the type. The Queen looks at you without warmth. We need a favor. And just like that, your performance begins. Off stage. You're handed a bundle of letters sealed in wax. Deliver these to the Abbey, she says. Personally, no one else. No shortcuts, no detours, no jokes. You nod, bow, and exit. Outside the gates, the world smells different. Fresher. Like dirt and pine and animal droppings that haven't been stepped on by 1,000 royal boots. The Abbey is half a day's walk away. You set off, boots uneven, cloak flapping in the wind like a dying banner. You pass fields, sheep, and peasants who look at you like you've escaped from a children's puppet show. One kid throws a turnip at you. It misses, barely. Along the road, you sing a little song, part habit, part disguise. A jester humming is less suspicious than a jester quiet. Quiet fools get noticed. When you finally reach the Abbey, the monks greet you with the enthusiasm of men who've taken a vow against joy. One of them, Brother Anselm, recognizes you. Oh, he says, the lizard juggler. That was one time, you reply, and it was technically a salamander. You deliver the letters. You are not supposed to read them. You do, anyway, carefully. Steam, lift, peek, reseal. Your eyes widen. Affairs, bribes, accusations. The Queen is playing a very dangerous game, and she's using you as her little velvet-wrapped dagger. Historians still argue whether jesters were pawns or willing accomplices in royal schemes. But if you've learned anything, it's that even a pawn can get crushed without anyone noticing. On the way back, you don't sing, you think. Hard. Back at the castle, the Queen barely acknowledges you. Just takes the nod as confirmation and waves you away. You've never felt more invisible. Later that evening, you're summoned again. This time by the king. He's lounging by the fire, sipping something that smells like boiling honey and regret. Come, he says. Tell me about the Abbey. You freeze. Did he know? Did you slip in the mud? He asks, laughing. You look like a trampled duck. You relax, a little. You make a few jokes. Embellish your trip. Add a story about a cow with political opinions. He laughs. Then he leans close. Too close. She's up to something, he whispers. Isn't she? You blink. Your Majesty? The Queen, my cousin. That smiling fox. Watch her. You nod, because that's what you do when the king leans in and implies he's one suspicion away from having someone walled into a tower. You're not a jester anymore, you're a coin. Being flipped. Being spent. Later, you're ordered to entertain a gathering of nobles in the library, which means distract them while a certain letter disappears from a certain shelf. You perform. You sing. You trip and knock over a candlestick. You shout, "Ghost!" Everyone laughs. Meanwhile, a young page slips out the door with something tucked under his tunic. When the nobles finally leave, one of them stops you. Do you enjoy being used? She asks. Her voice is like snow melting on steel. You grin. Depends on the day. She doesn't smile, just walks away. The truth is, you're tired. Not just in the bones and blisters way, but in the soul way. You're stretched thin. Between loyalties, between facades, between 100 masks you're expected to wear all at once. One moment you're dancing for children, the next you're smuggling treason in your boots. You once joked about a knight's illegitimate child. It was just a line. Harmless. But 2 days later, that knight accidentally knocked you into a fountain and nearly drowned you. No one helped. They just watched. Quirky tidbit of the night? Some fools were trained from childhood, taken in by courts and raised like pets, fed, clothed, and taught the fine art of walking the knife edge between adorable and disposable. You weren't trained. You were noticed. Pulled out of a tavern crowd. Too loud. Too clever. Too doomed. That night, in your straw bed, you dream of puppets. They all look like you. Some are smiling, some are weeping. All are tangled in strings. You wake up to the sound of retching. Not yours, thankfully. That was yesterday. This morning, it's the kitchen boy losing what little stew he had after catching a glimpse of Lord Pelmere's open leg wound. He slipped on a goblet during the hunt. More precisely, tripped over his own ego while trying to impress a duchess who already forgot his name. You don't blame the kid for vomiting. It's early. The castle stinks. And nothing says good morning like the tang of infected nobility and boiled cabbage. You, on the other hand, have other problems. Today's task? You're to cheer up a dying duke. That's the exact wording from the steward. Cheer up and dying should never be in the same sentence, but alas, here you are. You trudge to the upper chamber where the air is thick with candle smoke and regret. The duke lies in bed, skin like parchment, voice like gravel and milk. Around him are several hangers-on, cousins, clergy, and one mistress pretending to be a nurse. You perform. A limerick about his old war injury. A story involving a goose, a bishop, and a very confused tailor. You juggle apples, one of which is suspiciously soft. It explodes on the wall. People laugh. The mistress snorts. The duke coughs. Long, wet, maybe even amused. He croaks. You know, I had a fool once before you. Fell into a moat during a fire drill. Never found the body. You pause. Smile. Good to know, my lord. I'll avoid moat drills. Mainstream fact time. While most court jesters performed for entertainment, they were also often bedside distractions, summoned to bring humor to illness, madness, or even death itself. The logic? If you're dying, you might as well die laughing, but you're no medicine. When the show ends, you're dismissed with a nod. Not by the duke, but by his wife, whose face is a masterclass in passive loathing. Down in the courtyard, you regroup. Lean against a barrel, breathe. The sky's doing that moody medieval thing, gray, heavy, like it's about to dump rain and guilt all over everything. Then you're summoned again. This time to the nursery. A prince is teething, and furious about it. You're expected to perform for a baby. The nurse hands you a sock puppet. You name it Sir Gumpsalot. You make it dance. The baby screams anyway. You switch to fart noises. Still screaming. You finally flop to the ground, pretend to die dramatically, and that gets a giggle. The nurse claps like you've just ended a war. You are good, she says. Good at dying, you mutter. On your way out, you pass the scholar in the hall, Master Elric. He's carrying a stack of scrolls taller than most knights. He sees you and says, "Did you know ancient Romans had actors just to deliver the punchline of jokes? You'd have done well." You nod. File that one away. Might use it later. Maybe tonight. That night, there's a feast. Someone's engagement. Someone's defeat turned into a diplomatic win. You don't keep track anymore. You're ordered to perform between courses. The nobles are drunk. The music is louder than your voice. You raise a goblet for a toast, trip over a dog, and land face first in someone's lap. Big laugh. That buys you 3 minutes. You do a skit about a knight and a nun who run away together to become cheesemongers. You throw in just enough scandal to get the whispers going. Quirky detail here. Jesters weren't just joke machines. They were often living safe zones for satire. You could say something treasonous in jest. And if it landed well, you'd be considered brave. If not, well, back to the moat. You leave the feast early. The cook lets you steal a heel of bread and a bruised apple. You sit on the castle wall, feet dangling over the edge, watching torches flicker below like fireflies that got into wine. You think about quitting. Again. But where would you go? You've heard stories of traveling fools, nomads with bells and stories and scars. But the road is colder than stone, and you're not young anymore. Your knees remind you daily. There's a quiet moment just before the moon peaks. You hear someone sobbing near the stables. It's the knight who lost a duel earlier today. His pride is bleeding louder than his arm. You don't interrupt, you just sit. Quiet. Sometimes silence is the best performance. Then you hear the castle bell. Once, twice. You know that rhythm. It's a signal. Secret meeting, possibly spies, possibly lovers, possibly both. You rise, dust off crumbs, adjust your cap. Because guess what? You're needed again. You slip through the torch-lit halls like a shadow with bells. The bell signal was clear. 2 short tolls means get your mismatched shoes to the chapel. So naturally that's where you head, because apparently you're not only the court jester, you're also the kingdom's most underpaid errand boy / confidant / political. Footnote. Inside the chapel, it's colder than a nun's sigh. You wrap your cloak tighter as your footsteps echo down the aisle. At the altar stands Lady Mirabelle, the king's cousin. Behind her, Sir Thorn, whose armor is half undone, and whose expression screams, "This was not part of the plan." You're not surprised. These things happen. Mirabelle beckons you close. "We need your help," she whispers. "A distraction." Of course. You, professional human smokescreen. Turns out Mirabelle's been plotting a quiet escape to avoid a forced marriage to a land-rich, soul-poor baron who smells like pickled onions. Sir Thorn? He's her plan B, and C, D, and E depending on how the night goes. Your role? Cause chaos in the banquet hall for precisely 11 minutes. You nod. This isn't your first royal rendezvous cover-up. You dash back through servant corridors, grab a goose feather, a wineskin, and a small pouch of itching powder. You could just shout something scandalous, but where's the flair in that? You burst into the banquet like a whirlwind, slip, tumble, guzzle wine dramatically. Then, oh so casually, spill half the pouch of powder into the lap of the High Inquisitor. 5 minutes later, he's scratching, like he's got fleas from 7 different continents. The laughter is contagious. Nobles collapse into each other. You even catch the queen snorting into her goblet. Meanwhile, Mirabelle and Thorn are long gone, vanished into the night with a stolen horse and a sack of your best one-liners. You sneak out soon after. Another mission accomplished. And guess what? Nobody thanks you. But the steward does hand you a satchel. Inside, 5 silver pieces and a plum. That's practically a raise. You pocket the coins, eat the plum, mostly ripe, and head to your tiny room above the stables. The mattress is more straw than bed, and there's a mouse who shares your bread crusts. Still, you sleep, because tomorrow you have another royal problem to handle. Let's talk about that. You wake to yelling. It's Prince Willem, the king's youngest son, a walking temper tantrum in silk shoes. Today he's lost a hawk, or maybe the hawk left him. The details are blurry. You're dragged to the tower to lighten the mood. Willem is red-faced, pacing, threatening to throw the falconer in the moat. You pull out your puppet, Sir Gumsalot. Doesn't work. You juggle eggs. One breaks on your head. That gets a weak chuckle. You do an impression of the falcon. High-pitched screeching, flapping arms, dramatic dive toward the wine goblet. Prince Willem actually giggles. Progress. Mainstream historical note. Royal children were often raised under intense pressure, and jesters were sometimes used as early emotional regulators. Lessons wrapped in humor. A jester could joke what a tutor couldn't teach. But this kid? He's a piece of work. You manage to defuse the situation. Barely. The falconer is spared, and the hawk returns on its own with a small dead rat clutched in its talons. Triumph. Later, you find yourself dragged to the queen's chambers. Apparently, someone's spreading rumors, nasty ones. About her, about the king, about a certain carved ivory statue that went missing from the chapel last month. She wants names. You offer to perform a satire, something about gossips with donkey ears and noses that grow with lies. She smiles thinly. Don't go too far, she says. Too far is my specialty, you reply. So you write the thing. Perform it in the courtyard. Nobles laugh, servants whisper. The statue mysteriously reappears 2 days later. In the bishop's garden. No one says a word. You're useful, that's the thing. You're not just funny, you're functional. A tool of power wrapped in ribbons and rhyme. Quirky tidbit. Some jesters were kept not for their jokes, but for their memories. You know who married whom, who owes what to which family, and who cried after losing at dice. You're a walking scandal scroll, too dangerous to fire, too ridiculous to promote. By the end of the week, you've covered a noble's infidelity, distracted an angry peasant delegation, and helped the cook write a poem to woo the brewer's daughter. Historians still debate whether jesters like you were truly free agents or clever hostages, given just enough liberty to be unpredictable, but never enough to escape. You lean toward the latter. After all, what happens if one day you say the wrong thing? Not a joke. Not a slip. But the truth, you wonder about that sometimes. What if you stood in front of the whole court and said it? The king's plans are foolish. The baron's army is weak. The grain harvest failed because you ignored the omens. And no, your majesty, that hat doesn't make you look younger. Would they laugh? Or would you find yourself banished, whipped, or worse, sent to the monastery to reflect? You try not to think about it. Instead, you polish your bells, sharpen your wit, and practice new rhymes. Because tomorrow is another feast, another scandal, another opportunity to survive. Joke first. You start the morning face down in a bowl of yesterday's lentils. Not exactly your proudest wake-up moment, but considering the wine and the 3-hour dance-off with that merchant's parrot. Don't ask. It's kind of impressive you made it back to your bed at all. You wipe your face, rinse your mouth with rainwater from a cracked jug, and blink up at the ceiling beam, where a spider's been weaving something suspiciously intricate. Probably a metaphor for your life. Today is different. There's a whisper in the air. Servants are moving faster. The guards are more armored than usual. Something's brewing, and you, as always, are the last to be officially told, but the first to feel it in your gut. And you're right. A duke is arriving. Not just a duke. The Duke of Harrowmere. A name so ominous it sounds like it comes preloaded with thunderclaps and passive-aggressive diplomacy. Apparently Harrowmere has claims to the lands bordering your kingdom. And guess who the king plans to butter him up with? You, that's right. Out comes your nice jester hat. The clean one. No suspicious stains, no political cartoons stitched inside the brim. Your collar gets starched, your bells polished, and your smile forcibly upgraded from cynical to falsely serene. By noon, you're juggling silver goblets in front of the Duke and his entourage while making light jabs at trade tariffs and grain quotas. It's performance as diplomacy, and you're crushing it. Mainstream historical fact? Court jesters were frequently deployed to soften tense negotiations. Jokes became a tool of peacekeeping. If you could make the enemy laugh, maybe he wouldn't march on your village tomorrow, but this Duke isn't laughing. Not even smirking. His expression is what you'd expect from someone chewing on cold eel while watching a puppy get mildly insulted. So you adjust. You shift from slapstick to sly. You sing a song with hidden barbs, crafted just enough to let his men laugh while he pretends he doesn't get it. You note the twitch in his jaw, the way his wine goblet creaks in his grip. Eventually he chuckles, barely, but a chuckle is a victory. Afterward, you're summoned privately to the King's Solar. He's pacing. That man's a stone. I need him to agree to the trade deal. You nod, waiting. He mentioned liking your insight. He wants you to dine at his quarters tonight, alone. Okay, that's weird. But you don't say no. You can't say no, so you go. The Duke's quarters are like a crypt, all stone and oil lamps and the faint smell of disapproval. He offers wine. You take it, then he starts asking questions. About the king, about the court, about the bishop's rumored debts. You dodge, deflect, lie by omission with the finesse of a diplomat in tights. But inside, you're rattled. Because now you're realizing something. You're not just a jester anymore. You're intelligence. Quirky tidbit. In more than one medieval court, jesters doubled as spies. Who better to overhear secrets than the fool nobody takes seriously? You leave that room with a stomach full of suspicious goose and a head full of tension. That night, you write everything down, just in case. Because if Haromir decides war is better than laughter, you want someone to know what you knew. Historians still argue whether jesters served their kings or simply tried to survive them. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in between, a blurry line scribbled in wine and grease paint. The next day, the Duke leaves. No war, no alliance either. Just a pause. And you're the hero of the week, again. But your bed feels harder, your window seems smaller, and your dreams? They're full of shadowy dukes and laughter that doesn't reach anyone's eyes. You try to shrug it off. Tell yourself it's just nerves. Or maybe that goose wasn't cooked all the way. But the truth is creeping in now, isn't it? You're dancing on knives. And the court? It loves to watch you bleed, so long as you do it with flair. Later, you run into Lady Mirabelle again. She's back. Her escape didn't last. Neither did Thorn, apparently. He's now a squire for a minor baron, 2 counties over. Mirabelle? She's engaged again. To a merchant. Rich, dull, and much less poetic. I missed your jokes, she tells you, half smiling. Even the mean ones. You bow. Mean is my love language. She leans in, lowers her voice. Be careful, Jester. The game's shifting. You know it. The king's getting older. The queen's getting sharper. The nobles are more restless. And you're still here, smiling through it all, pretending none of it matters. But it does. It all does. That night, you perform again. A simple act. A tale about a donkey who thought he was a lion until a child laughed and the whole court joined in. The nobles roar with mirth. The king wipes a tear. And the child just stares at you like they know something, like they see something. It shakes you just a little. But enough. So you go back to your room, shut the door, and for the first time in months, you lock it. Because tomorrow, you might need a new escape route, or a better joke. Or both. You wake up with a letter under your door. Not unusual. Notes get slipped under your door all the time. Love poems from drunk maids, invitations to late-night dice games, anonymous drawings of you with donkey ears. But this one? It's on thick parchment, no seal. Just 2 words, inked in a shaky but determined hand. Trust nobody. You stare at it for a moment, then laugh softly, because of course. Of course, someone decided today was the day to spice up your paranoia with vague, ominous whispers. It's like seasoning your anxiety with extra salt. You burn the letter and the candle by your bed, just in case. Then it's back to work. Today, the court is in celebration mode. The prince, young, spoiled, with a jawline that could slice cheese, is getting engaged. And you're the entertainment, again. You're starting to feel like a decorative rug. Always stepped on, but everyone loses their minds if you're not there. The Great Hall is packed. Lush banners, exotic foods, nobles from far and wide. There's even a live bear in a cage for spectacle. Poor thing looks as bored as you feel. You get up to perform a comedy routine involving puppets and impressions of the council members. It kills. Even the bishop laughs. The bear sneezes. And then you go too far. It's a single line. A joke about the prince's fiancée, her family's penchant for marrying young, and the fact that she looks like she's already preparing for widowhood. It's subtle, clever. But the silence it causes? Deafening. The prince's face turns red. The bride's eyes shimmer. You step back, bow, and make a hasty exit. Backstage, a servant grabs your sleeve. You've been summoned. Here we go. You're led to the queen's private chambers. She's not smiling. I like you, Jester, she says, but don't think for a second that you're untouchable. You nod, apologize, perform a ridiculous pratfall just to diffuse the tension. It sort of works. She snorts, then waves you away. You leave, pretending not to sweat. Mainstream historical fact. Court jesters often walked a razor-thin line between amusement and offense. One ill-timed joke could get you banished, or worse. Several jesters throughout Europe were imprisoned or executed for overstepping royal boundaries. You'd think wearing bells would make them easier to forgive. Later that evening, you sneak some wine up to the tower with the guards. They're gruff but human. They laugh at your jokes without analyzing them for subtext. You talk about archery, weather, and whether the cook is hiding good cheese from everyone. You almost feel normal. Then, just before you head down, one of them says, "They say the prince has a hit list." You stop. What? He shrugs. Not official or anything, just names. People who embarrassed him. Might be nothing. You nod slowly. Cool. Cool. Nothing like a hit list to really lull you to sleep. You spend the next week walking on eggshells. No risky jokes, no impressions. Just light acrobatics, shadow puppets, and the occasional fart noise. You miss yourself. But the court? They seem to like this toned-down version of you. Even the prince. One day, you're invited to dine with him. Alone. Oh no, the meal is fancy. Quail eggs, stewed cherries, wine so strong your tongue goes numb. The prince is polite, smiling. Too polite. You're very clever, he says. Some people don't realize how powerful words can be. You nod, say something vague about storytelling and truth and laughter. You're practically sweating into your collar. Then he says, "Tell me, Jester. Do you think the people would follow me if I stepped up?" Your stomach flips. Because that's not just a question. That's a trap. He's asking if you'd support him in a power grab. Maybe against his father, maybe just to test your loyalty. Either way, there's no good answer. So you play dumb. Launch into a long story about a goose who thought he was a swan and tried to lead the pond. Everyone drowned. He doesn't laugh, but he doesn't stab you either. You call that a win. After dinner, you find a new letter under your door. This one says, "The prince has ears everywhere. Smile louder." You don't know who's writing these. You don't want to, but you listen. Smile louder. You start laughing harder in public. Making safe jokes louder. You become a mirror of court approval, so bright and shiny that nobody wants to look too closely. Historians still argue whether jesters influenced political outcomes or were simply pawns used for manipulation. You know exactly where you stand. Not quite influential, but far too close to the fire to stay cool. One night, while walking past the chapel, you hear raised voices, the queen and the bishop. You pause. They're arguing about the prince, about succession, about the situation in Harrowmere that never really went away. You catch phrases like "not ready," "dangerous," and "we can't let him inherit unchecked." Then silence. Then footsteps. You duck behind a statue of Saint Dymphna and try to look like part of the decor. The bishop walks past fuming. The queen follows, face like stone. You hold your breath until they're gone. Then you run back to your room and write it all down. Because now you're not just a jester. You're a witness. You know too much. Too many secrets in a court that doesn't tolerate memory. That night, you rehearse a brand new act. One with nothing offensive, nothing clever. Just a routine about a cat who thinks it's a cow. It's pure nonsense. And the crowd loves it. But inside, you're unraveling. The spider on your ceiling is gone. The rain jug is dry. And you're sleeping with a dagger under your pillow, just in case. Because trust is for fools, and you're only playing one. You've started drinking more, not the cheerful, let's laugh at our misery kind of drinking. Number. This is the quiet kind. The sip from a wooden cup in the corner while watching everyone lie to each other kind. You swirl the wine. You pretend to listen. You nod at things that don't need nodding, because the walls are whispering and the laughter feels rehearsed. Tonight you're performing for a visiting noble family, the Duke of Relish and his 2 sons, both of whom look like they were carved out of boiled meat and entitlement. They're all here to celebrate some new treaty, one that no one explains to you, of course. You're just supposed to juggle and grin while the nobility drowns in roasted duck and flattery. Mid-performance, one of the Duke's sons interrupts you, loudly. "You there, Jester, come here!" You freeze mid-balancing act, 3 apples and a polished skull mid-air, and walk toward him. He leans in, wine-soaked breath curling around your face. Do something funny, but real funny this time. Not that court baby stuff. You consider your options. You could humiliate yourself, maybe trip and land in his lap. Or mock him and risk getting whipped behind the stables. Choices. So, you opt for misdirection. You pull a rat from your sleeve. Not a real one, just a cleverly folded napkin that looks convincing in candlelight. You pretend it's alive. Shriek. Toss it at his plate. He screams. His brother screams louder. The entire table jumps. The queen bursts into laughter. Crisis averted. For now. Mainstream historical fact. Court jesters often use sleight of hand, animal mimicry, and physical tricks to amuse nobles who expected more than just jokes. Their survival depended on adaptability, and knowing exactly who to laugh at and when. After the feast, the Duke's steward corners you near the wine casks. You embarrassed them. You start to apologize, but he raises a hand. Good. They need humbling. Then he walks away. You blink. Sometimes allies come in strange packages, like resentful servants in brocade waistcoats. Later that night, you catch your reflection in the window. Candlelight behind you, the wind whistling outside. You barely recognize yourself. You used to be chaos in boots. Now you're a shadow of a smile with eyes that never rest. You can't even remember the last time you laughed, genuinely laughed, without calculating. The cost. In your dreams, the prince is watching you from a throne of mirrors. Every joke you tell bounces back at you, twisted and mocking. You wake up cold. A rat runs across the stone floor. A real one this time. It nods at you. You nod back. Sleep deprivation is doing wonders for your social life. The next morning, you're summoned to the scriptorium. A strange request. You rarely go there unless you've been caught doodling rude drawings on prayer books. Inside, the chamber is silent. Dust hangs like cobwebs in sunlight. A monk greets you. Old, gentle, but with ink-stained fingers that look like they've punched time itself. He shows you a scroll. This is about you, he says. You blink. What? He unrolls it. A record. Not of performances, but of your actions. Every controversial line. Every time you left the hall early, every noble you joked about. Notes like, potential influence on Queen's mood. Watch closely. You read in silence. You're being documented, the monk whispers. For your own protection, perhaps. or your eventual sentencing. You feel the walls close in. South. You're not just a clown anymore. You're a character in someone's political drama. The monk lowers his voice. Do you want me to keep writing? You look at him. Really look. His eyes are tired but kind. Write whatever helps me stay alive, you say. He nods. You leave quickly. On your way back, you pass the armory. The captain of the guard is barking orders at 2 trainees. One of them drops a sword, the other flinches. You keep walking, but he sees you. You there, Jester? You pause. Yes, Captain? You ever hold a real blade? You raise an eyebrow. Only to butter my anxiety. He chuckles, then tosses you a short dagger. Weighted, clean, deadly. Keep it. You stare at him. Why? He shrugs. Call it insurance. Quirky tidbit. Some historical jesters were taught basic self-defense or carried concealed weapons. Though not to fight nobles, of course. More often, they were meant for protection when traveling or in case a performance turned ugly. One jester in Poland reportedly stabbed a drunk knight who tried to test him. That night, you stashed the blade under your mattress. Just in case. You've stopped trying to predict who your enemies are. The prince smiles too easily. The queen watches too closely. Even the cook has started seasoning things a bit too strongly. You need a plan, so you do something reckless. You start talking to the kitchen boys. You know, the ones who sweep ashes and clean up after everyone. The invisible people. You learn things, like how the bishop has secret meetings after midnight. Or how the queen's handmaid burned a letter she never read. Or how the prince recently sent a pigeon to someone in Harrowmere. That last one makes your blood run cold. Because Harrowmere, that's where the rebellion began. Historians still argue whether jesters were capable of espionage, or if they simply overheard things out of pure proximity. But you know better. Proximity is everything. You're close enough to smell every secret as it sweats through silk robes. Your final performance that week is for the bishop's feast. You're told to keep it holy, which, as you well know, means don't mention the drinking, gambling, or mistresses. So you go for pure pantomime. You act out the 7 deadly sins using only exaggerated dance and a puppet chicken. It is absurd, it is glorious, and somehow it's a hit. Even the bishop chuckles, until you do pride and raise the puppet like it's sitting on a throne. He coughs, you smile innocently. You're playing a game now, one more dangerous than fire-eating or acrobatics. But it's addictive. You don't know if you're winning, you just know the stakes keep rising. And the curtain? Never truly falls. You're losing sleep. Not in a poetic, haunted by your art kind of way, more like startled awake in a sweat because you dreamed the prince was skinning you for insulting his haircut kind of way. The palace never sleeps either. There's always someone whispering, always someone sweeping, always someone who shouldn't be awake. Awake. You catch flickers of movement in the torchlight. Not ghosts, at least you hope not, but servants sneaking, messages being passed, deals being made. And you're juggling through it all. Literally and metaphorically. Your body still performs, still bows, still dances. But inside, you're tracking every glance, every hesitation in speech, every time someone doesn't laugh at your joke and instead just smiles. There's something brewing. The prince is quieter now. Brooding. You used to be able to make him laugh with a fart joke and a limp-wristed curtsy. But now he watches you the way a cat watches a spider. Curious, waiting to see which way you'll run. Mainstream historical fact. In several royal courts, jesters became so familiar with the political undercurrents that they were kept close not only for amusement but as informal advisors. Their social immunity let them say what others couldn't, until it didn't. One morning, you're summoned before him privately. You don't like this. Private audiences are rarely about laughter. He gestures for you to sit. You obey. He's holding a small carved box. Pale wood. Smells faintly of mint and varnish? You try not to stare. I've been thinking, he begins, voice smooth but icy. Here we go. You have a gift, Jester. You make people listen. Even the Queen listens to you. You smile carefully. Her Majesty has exquisite taste. Don't flatter yourself. Or do. I don't care. He pauses. But I want to know... If I gave you a message, would you be able to deliver it? To someone outside this palace? You blink. Depends who and depends if they want me dead. He grins faintly. Good answer. Then he slides the box to you. Take this to the blacksmith in Harrogate. He'll understand. You nod slowly. Am I allowed to ask what's inside? He looks bored. It's not a snake. That's all you need to know. You leave with the box, pulse pounding in your neck. Harrogate is 2 days' ride. The road is cold and full of potholes and thieves. But you've been out there before. You know how to disappear when necessary. You also know how to lie. Because the second you reach the stables, you don't head for Harrogate. You head to the old hermit outside the Westwoods, the one who owes you 3 favors from that time you helped him fake a death to escape marriage. You sit with him. You open the box. Inside, a ring, gold, family crest, no note. Just the symbol of the royal line. It's not a message. It's a signal. Quirky tidbit. During times of court unrest, nobles sometimes communicated with other houses using rings or medallions, tokens of allegiance. These were often passed through entertainers, who were less likely to be searched or suspected of espionage. Unless they got caught, of course. You don't ask questions. You just give the ring to the hermit and say, "If I don't come back, bury this far away." He nods. You return to the castle with your face as blank as stale porridge. When the prince asks, "Did he get it?" you simply say, "He understood." It's the first time you lie to royalty. It won't be the last. That night, the queen calls for you again. You expect another riddle-laced conversation, but this time, she's different. She's softer, sadder. Her hair is unbraided. She smells like lavender and candle smoke. "I had a dream," she whispers, gazing into the fire. You sit cross-legged near the hearth, your jester bells silent. In it, the court was burning. But no one screamed. They just watched. You swallow? Hey, was I there? She smiles. You were dancing on the roof. Of course you were. She leans closer. Tell me, fool, if the world crumbles, who survives first? The king? The knight? Or the jester? You don't answer immediately. Instead, you pick up a coal from the edge of the hearth with the hem of your sleeve. Something mildly dangerous but distractingly theatrical. I think the rat survives, up you say. The one under the throne. The one nobody sees. She stares at you. Then she nods, slowly. Historians still argue whether queens during this era were puppeteers or pawns, whether they quietly manipulated power or simply tried to stay afloat in a system built to drown them. Either way, many kept jesters close. It was one of the few human connections they could trust, or manipulate. The queen hands you something wrapped in cloth. You open it when you're alone. A tiny hourglass. Half filled. Time apparently is running out. You've become an unwilling middleman in a shadow war of smirks and silences. And now, others are watching you. The steward passes you a note under a tray of dates. It simply reads, "The prince knows." Knows what? You burn the paper instantly, but the words don't leave your head. You start laughing mid-meal, not because anything's funny, just because if you don't, you might scream. You develop a new act. It involves pretending to be different nobles, perfect imitations. You use it to distract, to misdirect, to hide the real stories you're soaking up like moldy bread and stew. And people eat it up. They laugh because it's dangerous, because you're saying what they wish they could, and because if they don't laugh, someone might notice. One night, you impersonate the prince. Just for a second, just a single raised eyebrow and frown. The hall goes silent. You switch back instantly. Pretend it was someone else. Someone safe, but too late. He saw. He leaves without finishing his meal. You're starting to realize something chilling. You've stopped being the jester. You've become the mirror, and not everyone likes what they see. The next day, your room is searched. Nothing's taken. Nothing's said, just searched. You find your mattress off-center, the blade under your bed moved half an inch, a page missing from your sketchbook. You keep your face calm, your body relaxed, but your heartbeat is a war drum. That night, the cook gives you extra goose fat in your stew and murmurs, "You should leave soon." You look up. "Why?" She shrugs. "The rats are restless." Rats again. Always the rats. You nod, slow. Back in your room, you pack. Just the essentials, a second pair of boots, 3 apples, the puppet chicken, and a coin sewn into your cuff. You stare out the window. The castle is beautiful in moonlight, pale stone glowing, banners fluttering like sighs. You wonder if you'll miss it. Probably not, but you will miss the sound of laughter. Even the fake kind, because at least it made you feel necessary. Now, you're a warning sign, a storm flag in motley, and every smile directed at you feels a second too long. Here's the thing no one tells you. Jesters don't retire. They vanish. One day they're the centerpiece of a royal feast, leaping over roast pigs and balancing spoons on their nose. And the next, they're gone. No fanfare, no farewell. Sometimes not even a grave. You ask the old nursemaid, the one who's been here longer than the bricks. She says, they either die in the act, or disappear when they get too good. You laugh. She doesn't. Let's talk about some of the ones who went splat, in the literal or historical sense. One Triboulet, the jester who outlived his punchlines. He mocked everyone at court, including the king, and somehow didn't get flayed alive. Legend says he once slapped King Francis I on the butt. When the king demanded he be executed, Triboulet begged, "But sire, may I choose how I die?" The king humored him. "Yes," Triboulet replied, "then I choose to die of old age." King laughed. Triboulet lived. Barely. But once the king died, so did his protection. Triboulet vanished from history's stage. Some say he ended up in a monastery, others say something hung from a tree once. 2. Stanchik, Poland's laughing ghost. He's painted in Renaissance robes, head bowed, looking exhausted. Not the vibe you expect from a jester. But Stanchik wasn't funny like the others. He was Poland's moral conscience in bells and velvet. He used satire to mourn, rage, and grieve for a crumbling kingdom. In one famous legend, he's the only one who realizes the enemy has invaded the capital, while the king's court party's on. He laughs, all right. He laughs like a funeral dirge. No one listened. And then, he disappears from court. Possibly fired. Possibly fled. Possibly disappeared before someone decided truth was a little too entertaining. 3 Jane Fool, the Invisible Woman. One of the few known female court jesters. She served Queen Catherine Parr and Queen Mary I. Wore bells, danced, joked. But here's the catch. Almost no records of her words remain. She's in the paintings, she's in the margins of letters, but her voice? Lost. Like a laugh that never echoes. Some speculate she was neurodivergent. Others say she simply knew how to navigate dangerous power structures. Either way, she survives longer than most. And then, poof! No date of death, no final joke. Just forgotten. 4 Archie and Mehitabel. Fictional, but not really okay. Bear with me. These are imaginary characters from early 20th century satire. Archie's a cockroach who writes poems by hurling himself at typewriter keys. Mehitabel's a street cat. They joke about poverty, death, futility. Why mention them? Because they are jesters. Just with antennas and whiskers. And their creator, Don Marquis, once said, "Humor is the weapon of the helpless." That line could have been carved into every jester's tombstone, if they'd gotten one. Back in your own skin, the castle's mood is shifting. More guards, more whispers, fewer laughs. You're still performing, but now the crowd watches like they're waiting for something other than jokes. The prince? He hasn't smiled in days. The queen? She smiles too much. You've started keeping track of exits in every room, counting seconds between torch flickers, hiding your dagger in a new spot each night. That sense of you might be next. It's no longer just a feeling. One afternoon you find a dead sparrow nailed to your door. Its wings are open. Its eyes are gone. You don't scream. You don't even flinch. You just remove it with a silver spoon and toss it into the garden. Later, you tell a joke about birds. No one laughs. Then someone tosses you a banana, literally. It arcs through the air like a slow yellow curse. You catch it without blinking, peel it, and take a bite. "Thanks," you say. "I needed potassium to survive the poison they put in my wine." Nervous chuckles. Real ones. But no one touches their cups for the rest of dinner. You're not sure if you're being paranoid or prophetic, but something's coming. A feast is announced. Big one. 3 nights from now. Everyone is expected to be there, including you. Especially you. You know what this means. It's either going to be a banquet or a bloodbath, and you might just be the centerpiece. But hey, that's show business. The kitchen buzzes like a disturbed hive. Geese are gutted, bread is braided, wine is decanted into polished jugs that shimmer like rubies. And the feast? Oh, the feast is coming. You feel it in your bones. The kind of feast where someone's head rolls under the table and nobody flinches. The kind where jesters either make them laugh until they cry, or just cry. You're pacing your room, adjusting your bells, one by one. You imagine which joke will be your last. Whether you'll go out on a pun or a pratfall. You wonder if they'll remember your name. You're not the first to face a dangerous dinner. History's full of feast fatalities. Take the Field of the Cloth of Gold, for instance. England's Henry VIII and Francis I tried to outparty each other in 1520. The food was absurd. Wine flowed from fountains. Wrestlers grappled in the mud for noble applause. And the jesters? Historians still argue whether they were allowed to mock the kings directly, or just each other. Either way, the wrong joke could have started a war. Imagine getting your head chopped off because your punchline landed too well. That's the job. Then there's Will Somers, Henry VIII's own fool. He survived 6 of Henry's wives. 6? That's more than most bishops and generals. How? He knew when not to joke. He walked that thin tightrope between satire and safety, even comforting the king as he grew sick and bloated and cruel. Somers outlived the king, retired quietly, and is buried in the same churchyard as royals. But was he happy? One court letter said he wept often in private, that he once whispered to a visiting monk, "The crown weighs on all of us." He wasn't wearing one, but maybe in his own way he was. Back to you. The feast begins. You're announced with fanfare, trumpets, applause. The prince sits high at the dais, flanked by his advisors and that new advisor, Sir Ulrich, the one who always looks like he's chewing secrets. The queen's eyes find yours. She smiles again. You bow so low your bells kiss the floor. Tonight's performance is a masterpiece. You juggle daggers. You impersonate the bishop. Dangerous. You even slip a sly rhyme about taxes that has half the court laughing and the other half checking who laughed too loud. But the crowd roars, and for a moment, just a moment, you let yourself believe, maybe I get to live. Then dessert is served. Poached pears. Yours is shaped like a little jester's cap. You feel the shift. The laughter starts to thin. Conversations hush. A slow ring of silence builds around your table like smoke. Then a clink. The prince stands. He raises his goblet. To the fool who tells too much truth. You freeze. The room watches you like you're a glass about to shatter. You bow again, a deep one, and you say, truth is a dish best served in another kingdom. Some laugh, some don't. Then Ulrich rises. He whispers something to the prince. The prince nods. Suddenly 2 guards appear behind you. You don't run, because here's the secret all jesters learn. Running only gives them a better excuse. And here's where it gets blurry. Some say you were dragged out screaming, bells jangling. Others say you bowed, performed one last cartwheel, and vanished in a puff of smoke. Okay, you'd been saving that smoke bomb for months. A third version? The one the kitchen boys whisper to each other when the candles burn low? They say you never died at all. You escaped, became a jester in exile, toured the back roads, changed your name, hid your bells, told your jokes to those who needed them. The poor, the grieving, the ones too tired to laugh, but who tried anyway. And in that version, you're still out there, right now. Maybe you run a roadside inn. Maybe you're the weird neighbor who always has a joke for the mailman. Or maybe you just whisper to the wind, telling riddles to ghosts and stories to owls. Historians still argue whether your last performance was suicide, subversion, or salvation. They debate the meaning of your final joke. They quote it in books. They tattoo it on their ribs. Every king needs a crown, but every crown needs a clown. In the end, there are no statues for jesters, no parades, just echoes. And maybe that's enough, because laughter lingers, and sometimes even centuries later someone hears it, in the rustle of a page, in the creak of an old stage, or in the whisper of a voice that says, "Hey, want to hear something funny?" And now, you're lying in a meadow. Not a real one, of course, but one stitched gently into the folds of your drifting thoughts. There's a soft breeze pressing against your cheeks like a silk curtain. Crickets whisper somewhere in the grass. Far away, a lute plays a tune so old even the stars have forgotten the lyrics. You are no longer in a court. There are no feasts, no daggers, no watching eyes. Just stillness. You survived it. Not because you were the funniest, or the most clever, or the most nimble on your feet, but because somehow you understood something the kings never did. That laughter is resistance. That joy is subversion. That the jester's power is not in bells or puns or tumbling routines. It's in knowing the rules well enough to bend them. Quietly, lovingly, cleverly, like a wink in the dark. And even if no one remembers your name, the echo of your voice still flits through candlelight and firewood smoke. Still hiding in bedtime stories and sarcastic toasts. Still chuckling in the margins of dusty books. You rest now under a sky that's velvet with stars, letting the hush settle over your chest like a warm blanket. No more tricks. No more tightropes. No more dancing on the edge of swords. Just the slow, sweet unraveling of breath. A yawn curls up from your chest like a ribbon. The meadow shifts into dreams. And your story, for now, ends here. On your terms. Peacefully, maybe even with a smile. Shh. Sleep well, Jester. You've earned it.